that lockout device is a positive means. It's usually a lock, either a key or a combination lock. Holds the device in a safe position so it can't be re-energized. And you know, it just depends on what that looks like, but you have all kinds of different lockout pieces of equipment. And once you have it and it works properly and stuff like that, it's not like you can use it on multiple pieces of equipment when you're using it, you know, so that you can have it, this time you're using it for this one, next time you're putting it on a different circuit breaker. So it's not like it goes away and you have to keep buying lots of these. You just have to buy enough to be able to do the job. And if you do be doing maintenance on several of them, then you should have that, okay? You want to use a tagout system, and the thing I would tell you is to use the tagout with the lockout, because that gives the information. So when people see a lock, they don't know who put it on there or anything else like that. But if you put it on there, they obviously get a good picture of this as far as, yeah, this is who put the lock on, this is why they put the lock on. That gives me some information. So if I want to find out the status, I can get a hold of that person and find out what the status is for that particular lockout procedure. So if locking out is not possible, you can utilize a tagout system. However, you have to prove that it's not able to be locked out. In a lot of cases, that's not easy to do, because most of the equipment now you buy comes with the lockout, tagout positions on that piece of equipment, all right? So if it can be locked out, it needs to be locked out. It has to be locked out, okay? If you use a tagout system, it has to be equivalent to your tagout. It has to provide the same type of protection. Now, what that means is that you also have to talk with your folks, right? And where you come into that protection is they have to have a clear understanding that when they see a tag, that means don't mess with it. And so this is why it's a lot harder to do with a tag system without the lockout, because it still allows people to be able to turn on and off that thing. So you're trusting that your folks are well trained enough and have a clear understanding of what the requirements are, that it provides the same protection as a lockout system would, okay? So one of the things to keep in mind is one lock, one key. You don't want to keep a bunch of those keys around in the office, because you know that people will go, oh, I know where the keys are, and then they'll try every key that they can. So everyone who's authorized and uses a lockout should have their own lock assigned to them, and they're the only ones with a key. Then you should have procedures set up so that if that person, for instance, leaves during the day and they left the lock on there, but you have to have procedures in place before you can remove that lock to get a hold of them, to notify them that you've finished doing the maintenance on that piece of machinery and now you're going to take the lock off. So if you do have multiple locks, you really have to, multiple keys to that lock, you have to really be careful. So in some cases, I suggest just having bolt cutters and having those really strong procedures as far as you have to go to the nth degree, notifying that person before you can remove that lock off of there, okay? So if you have more than one person involved in the process and doing that particular servicing or whatever, everyone should have their own lock that goes on there. So for this particular sawmill, it was really interesting watching them, but they had a jam. 5 guys got on this piece of machinery to get the jam. Each person that was involved, they put one of these hasps on there, and each one of them applied their own lock to it while they were doing the unjamming of that equipment. Once each one of them was done, each one of them took their own lock off, and the job was not done until the last person removed their lock off of that hasp. So the hasp wasn't removed until everyone was totally done, okay? So that gives protection to each individual person on that team, okay? So you want to develop those particular procedures for individuals within this operation so that, you know, if you're going to have shift changes, what's the responsibility from one shift to the next? What are you going to exchange the key, or do they take their lock off and the other person puts their lock on, which is the better procedure? You just want to make sure that they exchange it across the way so that there's a good shift change in there, that they notify them exactly where they're at with the maintenance, so that they know exactly what needs to be done to get this piece of machinery back online, so that before they remove their lock, they have a clear understanding of what they need to do and how they need to finish that particular job. Well, you're going to have a written program, and like all written programs, you want to start off by telling people what the purpose of the program is. And that's basically to protect people from any kind of released stored energy during maintenance or servicing that could lead to injury. You want to identify the equipment. You want to talk about those procedures. Where are you going to place the lockout device? Each piece of equipment should be, when you identify the equipment, you should identify that at the same time. Where are we going to lock it out at? Okay. Startup and shutdown procedures, periodic inspections, and then training. Okay, so to get started with, and this is just an easy step-by-step process in doing that, the first thing you're going to do is evaluate your operations. What are we doing servicing on or maintenance on that would fall under this program? So then the next step is determining which one those are, and then once we determine which pieces of equipment are covered by this program, then we're going to document what those energy sources are for each piece of equipment. In some cases, we can group like items together. So we got a whole bunch of printing presses. They're basically the same type of printing press. They have the same energy sources going to those presses, those kind of things. Then in that particular case, I can group them under certain requirements and also procedures and things like that. However, where I lock each one out is probably going to be different, is it not? Because each one will have a different circuit breaker, so I may have to identify what those circuit breakers is. One might have an airline coming in a couple different places, pneumatic air or something like that. So those are the things that you want to identify and make sure where you're going to lock things out at. Then once you do that, what kind of energy isolating devices do you want to use? Are you going to use something to where it's like maybe just unplugged and then you take it and you put the cap over the plug? Or is it something to where start switch that you can lock off and you know that they have already built in? You know, when you buy them from like Home Depot and stuff, you can see where that lock actually fits through that hasp, so you can't re-energize it unless you take out the lock. Okay, so there's some different things that you can see. Where are we going to lock that out at? Then you want to develop and implement startup and shutdown procedures. So the shutdown procedures, where are you going to get this information? Do you have to reinvent the wheel again? Well, you could get the OSHA website, but I'm talking about for a specific piece of a machinery. Yeah, they've already built that in, haven't they? They already told you what to do on startup and shutdown. So all you have to do is incorporate that into your process. The only thing that would be different is on shutdown, because even though you've isolated the machine, you've turned off all the energy going to it, some pieces of machinery still have like a transformer or something in there that has stored energy. So part of that shutdown procedure is you turn it off, isolate it, lock it out, and then you're going to go back over and you're going to re-energize that piece of machinery again to release any stored energy that might be in there. Okay? And then you, of course, turn it back to the off position. Then you go ahead and start into your process. And then once you're done with that, then your startup procedures, you want to make sure it's kind of the same thing that you're following. But one of the key things you want to follow is if you know that you've had maintenance and servicing going on, what's the one thing that you want to make sure that your folks do before they start anything back up again? You want to make sure that they have an accounting of their tools so that when they start things up that it doesn't get caught in the mechanism and cause you even greater problems, okay? You want them to know about the procedures, and you want to make sure that they completely understand what you're trying to do with this so that you don't have people that are trying to go behind other people and re-energize those pieces of equipment. For instance, you know, somebody has problems and something's not working. Well, go check the circuit breaker panel. And you know, how many people you see this? They just walk up to the circuit breaker panel and they get frustrated because maybe you don't have it ID'd like you probably should. And they just go in there, well, we'll just turn everything on then. That'll work. So then they try and turn everything on. So you want to make sure that they have a clear understanding what you're trying to accomplish with this, okay? And then, of course, the last part of this is just looking at making sure that you do an annual periodic inspection to make sure that people are applying the lockout, tagout stuff the right way. They're following the procedures. And again, when you do this, you want to document it. You want to show that people are following the procedure. This, so when OSHA does come in, you can show that you've been following up and making sure that everyone's following the proper procedures.